Right, so aid trucks being stopped from trying to get through to Gaza are nothing new, sadly. It isn't really news to us anymore, is it? They continue to happen. And now that Israel has seized control of the Rafah border crossing completely and totally cut off aid from getting in that way, aid now having been blocked there for the last 4 days and counting now at time of writing, in total violation of the orders handed down to Israel by the ICJ as well. But Israel do not care about such things, it seems. They don't believe in doing as they're told. The rules of such people do not apply to them. And anyone who disagrees is, of course, an antisemite. Such is their blatant arrogance throughout the last 7 months of genocide in Gaza that we've been borne witness to, though, that they have no problem with being filmed in what they are doing, proud to block trucks, sabotage them, cause actual damage in order to stop them, criminal damage, and then scatter the aid being brought into the four winds. No authorities stopping them, adding to the famine has already broken out in Gaza. Right, so footage has come out all across social media of settlers having stopped trucks entering the Palestinian-occupied territories of the West Bank most recently, bound for Gaza, apparently coming from Jordan. Settlers are apparently damaging the tyres of the trucks as they're trying to come through, blocking the passage of them, stopping them in their tracks so they can then climb on board, as we've seen in various videos, climb on the board of the back of the loaders and desecrate the aid that's supposedly being delivered to people driven past the point of famine by now by the Israeli government, who they, of course, are supporters of. Climb on top of the trucks, they're throwing the aid off, they're waving Israeli flags as they do so, proud of what they are doing and in whose name they are doing it, and justifying their actions by saying all of it is for Hamas, truck after truck after truck. 98 of them apparently stopped up until now, and of course it absolutely isn't. We've seen the signs of famine, we've seen children reduced to skin and bones, dying of starvation, but the one thing we definitely haven't seen is bloated Hamas operatives moving around looking like Jabba the Hutt because all the food was for them and they ate all the pies. These disgusting excuses for human beings, these settlers squatting on lands that are not theirs, being filmed stamping all over the boxes, dragged off these vehicles, kicking them around, throwing aid as far as they can, completely emptying the back of the trucks in one clip that I've watched, all the aid scraped off, and what I noticed from watching it is you could see what looked like a checkpoint in the background. They were either coming up to one or they'd just come through one. So where were the authorities to stop this then, in which case? There's just no will to do so, seemingly, is there? It just keeps being allowed to happen. Committing a crime, escalating the fallout from genocide, deny people who are not Hamas at all, even the most very basic level of aid, simply because of who they are. The depravity on show is staggering. It's just extreme. But then you realise these are clearly all white people that are doing the damage. They are in the West Bank, apparently. Therefore, these are illegal settlers who shouldn't even be there and are themselves a symptom of the occupation, doing their part to keep the genocide going. Israel had recently opened crossings into the southern West Bank from Jordan, and via 2 new crossings at Tarkumia and Kiryat Arba, which I probably said completely wrong, aid coming that way can cross to a newly opened Gaza crossing, opened just yesterday in fact, and which is much more easy to say. They're calling it Western Eretz, which would get into the north of Gaza. But of course, that depends on the aid getting that far, doesn't it? And when the trucks aren't even able to get through the West Bank successfully, it seems, without Zionist squatters, as it were, interfering, without being stopped and the aid destroyed, it's a bit of a stretch. The thing is, what we've observed happening in the last few days, as I've described above, has actually been the 3rd such attack, apparently, on aid convoys coming from the east via the West Bank. Therefore, the authorities by now have got no excuse, really, not to be acting upon it. Deal with these people, taking it upon themselves to act like petty aid vigilantes, taking the law into their own hands, but so big and brave that their chosen targets are literally starving to death and consist mostly of women and children. How courageous of them. Every one of those boxes I see being ripped apart, I see as another child who might not have eaten for days going hungry again. When I see these people gleefully grinning and waving their flags, I see that as being what they are celebrating. Frankly means I don't let myself become insulated after all this time to what they're doing. My anger isn't growing any colder. AL Monitor, a Middle Eastern news outlet that is actually based in the US, said this in its coverage of the incident. A total of 98 trucks carrying food and relief supplies were coming from Jordan early on Monday when dozens of settlers blocked their route at the Tarkumia and Kiryat Arba checkpoints that lie near Israeli settlements in the south of Hebron. Adel Amir, a member of the shipping syndicate in Palestine, told the Palestinian MAN news agency they damaged the truck's tyres and vandalised the cargo, throwing the parcels of food on the ground and tearing them apart, according to Amir. Videos circulating online showed settlers climbing a truck and throwing food supplies as others waved the Israeli flag. Similar attacks against aid convoys heading to the Gaza Strip, where the 7-month war continues to rage, have occurred in the past few weeks. Last Tuesday, dozens of far-right Israelis blocked the roads at the Latron junction near Jerusalem, preventing aid trucks coming from Jordan from passing through. They also attacked the convoy, damaged their content and dumped the food supplies on the ground. Israeli police later said 6 people were arrested in connection with the incident. Jordan's foreign ministry condemned the attack on its aid convoy that was heading to the Eretz crossing with the Gaza Strip in southern Israel. In a statement last Tuesday, Jordanian Foreign Ministry spokesman Sufyan Kudah said the kingdom holds Israel responsible for the attack and considers the Israeli government's failure to prevent such incidents a violation of its legal obligations. It would be nice if Jordan did something other than issue strongly worded statements, frankly. Even Egypt at this point have had enough of Israel, now joining South Africa against them, having been for months mediators in negotiations between Hamas and Israel for a ceasefire and a peace deal. But one thing Jordan are doing, that Israel of course no longer are, is letting Al Jazeera report from their land on the situation. And they offered an insight into why this nonsense is being permitted.
Been seeing this now for months because those protesters say it's going to Hamas. They simply don't want any aid going to the Palestinians, full stop. They don't make a distinction between Hamas and civilians. But little is being done on part of the Israelis to stop this. The Israelis, as we know, have an incredibly powerful security force when it comes to particularly looking at Palestinian protesters, but they're not doing the same when it comes to these protests. Now, Jordan, before, when there was another incident, condemned it, saying that Israel is under a legal obligation as the occupying power to ensure that aid gets in swiftly. But interestingly, Cyril, we keep talking about Itamar Ben-Gvir, the right-wing minister. Well, he's head of the police force, and he, according to many reports in the media, has told the police really to not really get involved because his ideology is the same as those protesters, is that he wants settlements to start again in Gaza. He doesn't want aid to get in. He doesn't want a ceasefire. And he's holding the prime minister to the position that, you know, if he does get some kind of a deal going and not going into Rafah, that he will collapse this government. So gives you the sense of the complexities, political complexities, and how they are affecting even the aid convoys getting to Gaza.
So Al Jazeera are saying it is Itamar Ben-Gvir that's heavily involved in this, for it is him again, according to Stephanie Decker there, the poster boy for settlers apparently, doing his favourite thing of threatening Netanyahu with collapsing his coalition government if he doesn't get his way again. And he apparently has demanded the police be allowed to stay out of it when settlers attack the aid trucks, for these are his people, his political persuasion, his faction, hard-right nut jobs, and just let it happen. Very much that seems to be the case as usual. Staying in power is all-consuming to Netanyahu, which is why none of this can be resolved while he remains in power. There's no desire to sanction or boycott Israel that is being hampered all over the world by politicians in the Israel lobby's thrall. So it's no wonder we look on and we see these things and we still feel so bloody helpless. Although there are records of arrests being made, these do seem tokenistic. Certainly aren't enough to put settlers off carrying on. This is the latest of a string of attacks on aid convoys, and there's certainly no obvious police presence in any of the clips that I've seen. The people involved here belong to a group apparently calling themselves Zav 9, who have dedicated themselves to no aid getting into Gaza until the hostages are released. You might want to have words with your own Prime Minister about that, because Hamas agreed terms which would have seen hostages beginning to be released by now. It was Netanyahu who refused to agree to that deal in the end. No doubt with Ben-Gvir, the sort of politician who resonates with them, though they likely wouldn't believe a word of that if you told them as much. Supposedly there are around 400 of these people, consisting of members of the IDF, their families, and the families of hostages. If these people are known, therefore, why have they not been dealt with appropriately? Same reason Israel hasn't dealt with settlers anywhere else. They're on their side and don't fear any real repercussions, but the repercussions are certainly being felt by those in Gaza. And the violation of the ICJ orders, as these acts amount to, are maddening the rest of us around the world who are still watching this happen. Know how preventable it is, and with more video footage coming from Egypt, from near the Rafah crossing, where truckload after truckload after truckload of aid that cannot get into Gaza anymore is seen to be sat there now rotting and fouling in the desert. The message cannot be ringing in the ears of those in positions of power loud enough to do something, because so far what has been done is not enough. Unless Gaza's borders are forced open and peacekeeping forces deployed to ensure they stay that way, to ensure aid is getting in, aid will not get in. Israel have had far too long. They've had more than enough time to sort this out. Aid is not passing through. The UN should have intervened by now to force this issue. People are dying every day that this doesn't happen. Netanyahu himself is cornered. The world needs to accept this. He's cornered by the world's condemnation on one hand, by the ratbags he's in power with, that he chose to go into coalition with to get into power, by a war he started that can in no way be considered a proportionate retaliation to the night of October 7th anymore, that he now can't end because of the same people he's now in government with. There's no way out of this for him. But he's looking for one still, because if he loses power, he's done for. So that is now all that matters to him, as this video recommendation will explain all about, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.